I want to welcome everybody to the first NETPA event of the new year. We do these meetings on the third Friday of every month. We take turns. Sometimes we have presenters, sometimes we have employer panels. Today we're going to be doing a presenter, and I just want to welcome you to the event today, and I want to thank you for being here. My name is Ryan Englin. I am the president of NETPA. I own a company called Core Matters, and we work with businesses to help them hire better people faster. I'd also like to introduce you to the rest of the board at NETPA so that you can get to know them, put a face to the name, because I know a lot of us get emails from everybody else, and so sometimes it's nice to meet them. So I'd like to introduce Verily Keenan. Verily, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself. You're muted right now.
I knew that. Hello, everybody. Happy Friday, the joys of technology. My name is Verily Keenan. I'm Vice President of NETPA, and I'm a business services representative with Arizona at Work, Maricopa County, and welcome everybody.
Thank you, Verily. I'd like to introduce Maggie Kasparek.
Good morning. My name is Maggie Kasparek. I have been on the NETPA board for about 6 or 7 years. I'm currently the secretary, so you will be hearing from me when you sign up for presentations or if there's information that we need to share with you. So welcome to NETPA, and we're looking forward to our next hour with you.
And then finally, Jose Rojas.
Good morning, everyone, and happy Friday. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jose Rojas, and I'm the treasurer for NETPA, and I am also an employment rehab manager with Mercy Care. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you. So just a little bit about NETPA, for those of you that may not be familiar with us. We are a organization that is established in Maricopa County to really connect job seekers with gainful employment. And our focus is on connecting the underserved to the right employers. So we have a very specific group of job seekers that we look to help, primarily those with disabilities or those immigrants with English as a second language. Sometimes those barriers can get in the way of them finding gainful employment. So we really want to work with our community partners and our community employers to make that connection happen. We also believe in and growing our community. Our focus really is on Arizona, but most of our efforts are right here in Maricopa County. And then we do a little bit about some things that are unconventional. We don't want to be like everybody else. We want to stand out. We believe that that'll give us the opportunities to give the most value to our members and the job seekers in the community. So together with our community partners, we recognize job seekers with barriers and challenges, and we connect them to long-term gainful employment. That is really our focus. That is our purpose. All of the decisions we make at NETPA are in alignment with that. And we want to keep this a small, close-knit community with about 50 employer members that are really focused on making an impact in the community. So we have a pretty rigorous screening process for becoming a member, for being a presenter, or being on one of our employer panels, because our focus is really, if we can put an emphasis on quality, we can just make a greater impact. Now, for those of you that signed up, did not get the email this morning, James Montoya is not going to be able to make it today. He had something come up, and we're actually going to be looking to reschedule him for next month. So be on the lookout for that information. In the meantime, I'm going to be giving a short presentation / workshop that I do with other associations to help employers really break through finding high quality people. Interviewing for success is something that we teach employers almost just as much as job seekers have to learn this. Too often I find that employers get hung up into compliance and into a process, and they forget to really look through some of the things that job seekers are dealing with in today's environment. So we're going to be discussing some practical tips. I've modified this workshop a bit so that we can speak to job seekers as well, because I know we've got some community partners on the call today. This for me is interactive. So I have that same expectation here. Raise your hand if you need to speak. If you have a question, throw it in the chat. I'd love to get your questions answered. Feel free at any time if anything comes up. I'll be watching the chat. The rest of the board will be helping me out with that as well. So do not be afraid to interrupt me, ask questions, or even ask me to address some of the challenges you might be facing right now. Perfect. All right. If you guys cannot see my screen with my picture on it right now, please let me know. But as I said before, not only am I the president of NETPA, I am the CEO and founder of Core Matters. And our focus is on helping employers hire better people faster. We have a very unique approach to doing this, and some of our secrets I'm going to be sharing with you today. If you're a community partner, if you're a job seeker on today's call, I want you to listen carefully to what I coach the employers on doing, because often I find job seekers making these exact same mistakes. So we're going to dig deep into the interview process. But before we get there, I always like to ask a question. Why is hiring good people so difficult? And if you wouldn't mind throwing that in the chat with me, in the chat for me, some ideas that you have, some thoughts you have on this. If you're an employer, why is finding and hiring good people so difficult right now? And if you're a job seeker, why is finding a good job so difficult right now? One of the things that I find very interesting about the state of the current job market is that employers are hiring more people now than they were 6 or 12 months ago. There are more open jobs in the marketplace. Doesn't matter where you live, they're out there. Unemployment is up. There are more job seekers looking for gainful employment. Yet on both sides of the aisle, I hear that employers are struggling to find good people and job seekers are struggling to find good jobs. Somewhere, something is breaking down. There's a communication piece that's missing. So let me share with you some of the reasons it's difficult to hire. COVID, transparency, competition, absolutely. All valid reasons. If we take COVID out of the mix, which has really thrown all of us for a spin and for a loop, it's really hard to find any kind of data around the impact COVID has had. We know that unemployment is up. We know that employers are spending a lot around the safety and health of their team members. We know that job seekers are concerned about going out into the marketplace, especially if they have to go on site. So COVID is definitely impacting us. But if we take COVID out of the mix, which is really going to be the focus of this, because at some point in time, we will get back to closer to normal. I think that for a lot of employers, they've found that working remote can work, but there are some jobs that just you cannot be done remotely. So it does take a lot of effort. On average, you need 109 resumes to make one hire. Some employers are more, some are less, but on average, 109 resumes. So for those job seekers out there right now who are saying, I never hear back from the employer, I apply and I press submit on my application, and I think instead of saying submit, it really says delete. They never hear back. This is one of the reasons why. Employers have to look through so many applications, and if yours doesn't stand out, there's a good chance you may not hear anything. There's a good chance that you may not make the cut for the interview. They're looking through a lot of resumes. And for a lot of employers right now, I'm just sharing with the job seekers, there's been reduction in HR support. So there are less people having to do more work. So if you're a job seeker, it's really important you stand out. That's a lot of resumes. Here's the other thing. The average number of stages in a recruiting pipeline is 9. We teach 6, but we have some clients that go 10, 11, 12, depending on how many people are involved in the process. So if you are a job seeker, think about this. Not only do you have to get into the pipeline, but now you've got to get through 9 separate stages against all of this competition. It's a lot of effort put into, from the employer's perspective, of looking for good people. Again, it takes a lot of time. 2.8 hours spent interviewing per candidate. I know there's some employers on the call that are thinking, 2.8 hours, I wish. And then there are others are like, are you kidding me? There's no way we could invest 2.8 hours in interviewing a candidate. But that's the average across all industries. And it takes almost 30 days to fill a position. So we've got 109 applicants. We've got 9 stages in the recruiting process. We spend 3 hours interviewing a candidate, and it takes 30 days to fill. From the employer's perspective, we're putting in a lot of effort to hire somebody who doesn't work out. So we find somebody, we're so excited, we hire them, 3 weeks later, they quit. Or 3 weeks later, they can't perform. Or 3 weeks later, something else comes up. And all of a sudden, we're thinking, now I have to start that process all over again. Kind of reminds me in the old days, I used to have a sign on my desk with a big circle on it, and it just said bang head here. And I just put it on the desk. And I could just think, oh my gosh, I just want to bang my head because I have to start this whole process over again. So if you're a job seeker, think about this too from the employer's perspective. They have a lot to process. There is a lot that they have to go through in order to find somebody that they want to hire. So from a job seeker's perspective, be patient and make sure you can stand out. Because at the end of the day, when the employer does make that offer, 1 in 3 decline. So I've gone through this whole process as an employer and I'm thinking, great, I got some people lined up, I'm ready to make offers, and 1 out of 3 decline. And there are some reasons for that. Primarily is it takes 30 days to fill, there's 9 stages in the process, and job seekers, some of them, they need to find work. They may not have the luxury of time in that sense. But from an employer's perspective, it takes a lot of time. And it can really cost you. So now you've hired these people, you're excited, and 50% of them leave in the first 6 months, in the first year, wherever your time frame is for managing turnover. We measure it at 90 days. So within 90 days, 50% of employees actually leave and go somewhere else. And these are some numbers. So we do a lot of work on the frontline hourly employees. That's really our focus. It's really difficult to find stats around frontline employees. Most of them are around senior leaders, management, because the studies are done there and they're easy to do. But with the frontline employees, the smallest number I found is almost $5,000 is what it's going to cost to replace that person. And I get most of these aren't going to be direct costs, a lot of indirect costs, training, onboarding, HR compliance, all of the things you have to go through, and 1/3 of their annual salary. So it can be really, really expensive to get through this process. The simple truth is we need a new way for processing employee applications. And for job seekers out there, you need to think differently about the way you're applying for work. The #1 response I get from HR leaders across the board, what can job seekers do better? The simple answer is follow instructions and complete the application. If you feel things aren't relevant to you, explain why. Complete the application as thoroughly as you can. Sending in a name and a resume and not answering any of the pre-screen questions or not answering them thoroughly is one of the fastest ways to get your resume not looked at, because we've got so many others to look at. Now I want to share, this is based on my book called Unmasked, How to Hire the Ones You Won't Want to Fire. You can actually go and get a copy of it on Amazon if you'd like, or if you like a PDF version of it, you can download it for free at my website, thecorematters.com. So we're going to talk about unmasking candidates during the interview process. The idea being that job seekers show up for the interview ready to go. They've got their answers, their canned answers ready to go. They know what questions are going to be asked because most employers are asking the same age-old questions. I actually have a Pinterest board that I share. It's all of the infographics. It's all of the articles that tell people how to answer the where do you want to be in 5 years? Or why did you apply for this job? You see, all of these questions that employers ask, they all have a very similar purpose. They're asking, why me? And job seekers have learned how to answer that question so much so that they rehearse it in their interview process. What we need to do as employers is we need to start thinking differently and ask different questions. The simple truth is that switching jobs is a very stressful event. It's on the same list of stressful events as moving, relocation, death of a loved one, divorce. It's on that same top 10 list of stressful events. Most job seekers don't want to switch jobs. They don't want to accept a job and then leave in 3 or 4 weeks because they're not engaged, they're not performing. What we have to do as employers is we have to figure out what's the root cause for them switching managers. People don't leave jobs, they leave managers. The only people that leave jobs is if they're doing something, let's say that they're working on the line, and then all of a sudden they decide they want to go into landscaping. Now they've left a job. They're trading one set of skills for another. They're trading one type of work for another. But if you have someone who's a driver and they go apply somewhere else to be a driver, they're not switching jobs. They're doing the exact same job. What they're doing is they're switching employers. So it's really important that we understand that there's a connection that has to be made here. What we really have to do is discover authenticity. What we need to do is we need to learn what is the real reason that this person is leaving their current employer, coming to work for us. Why is it that they applied here? And what behaviors and principles do they have that align them to our values so that we can make sure we have a very productive, very engaged, very profitable employee? Now, for those job seekers, community partners listening here, you need to be thinking about this process the exact same way. I don't know too many job seekers that love bouncing around jobs. They love it when employers are committed, when employers are investing in them, when employers are engaged. And that's what we want to do here, is we want to figure out how do we make that connection. So for job seekers, really get clear on what it is that you want out of a new relationship with an employer, what you want out of that position that you're seeking. So is there anything you can do to find the right candidates during this process? As I said, with so many applicants coming through and there being so many stages in the process and HR being reduced to minimal staff right now and not having the capacity to really get through everything, sometimes their hands are tied. So when we get someone to the interview process, what is it that we can do to help them out? When it comes to selecting the right candidates, it's really important that we're very clear on the process, because 89% of candidates are going to drop out or are lost because the hiring process takes too long. Remember what I said, job seekers, they need a job. So especially if they've been displaced, they're unemployed right now, they're furloughed, they don't have income coming in, it's really important to them that they make a decision quickly. A lot of them don't have the luxury of time. So that leads me to my next question. What impact does constant communication have on hiring rock stars? What I'd love is for anybody that is on the call right now, I would love to know, what do you find is one of the most effective ways to communicate with job seekers? And I know for a lot of us, we like to automate that process because if it's automated, it'll happen. But we have to be very careful in how we automate the process as well. So if we're thinking about improving this hiring process, if we're thinking about how do we get people engaged sooner, how do we connect with them sooner, we have to understand that 4 out of 5 job seekers say continuous communication would greatly improve the overall experience. There's a real disturbing stat out there. It's some 65% of job seekers say that when they hit that submit button and apply for a job, they never hear from the employer, ever. And I've worked with some applicant tracking system providers. Their stats go as high as 87%, never hear from the employer. So they hit submit, and it feels like that button really said delete, didn't say submit, because nothing ever happens. They never hear. They never get a thank you for your application. They never get a we've decided to hire someone else. They never get any communication. Cynthia, thanks for sharing. Text, email, LinkedIn plus automation. LinkedIn is great if your job seekers are on LinkedIn. We find that a lot of times job seekers, especially in the frontline hourly employees, a lot of them don't have LinkedIn profiles. So if we're putting a lot of our effort into LinkedIn and we're hiring $15, $18, $22 an hour people to do a very laborious job, maybe they're out on the line, maybe they are technicians in the field, maybe they're just general laborers, they may not have LinkedIn profiles. So we got to make sure that we're communicating with them where they're at. Another thing we run into a lot in Arizona is the Hispanic population, who very much is about community. And a lot of times they use shared phone numbers, shared email addresses. And so if our primary way of communicating with them is with a family email address, that can be a real challenge in helping them understand that where they are in the process, because it's getting confused with a whole bunch of other emails for other family members. So text messaging we find is really good there if your employer or if you approve text messaging. I know there's a lot of debate on whether or not that works. The other thing is 83% of candidates want employers to provide a clear timeline of the hiring process. How many of you on this call, when an application comes in, if you're sending that automated email reminder or text, actually spells out what your process looks like? They get the, hey, we received your application. Thank you so much. We can't wait to review it. Here's what our process looks like. Within 24 hours, we'll review your application. We'll make a decision whether or not you're moving forward. If you're moving forward, you'll get an email from us, and we'll let you know how you can schedule your first interview. That would engage people at such a higher level early on in the process that would make it easier for you to actually have an authentic conversation with them. And they would, and what happens is they turn out being some of your most engaged employees, or you get the clear red signs, the red flags that say, you know what, this is not right. These aren't the right people for us. So here's a few pointers. What I'd love the job seekers to do is think about this, because remember, employers got a lot on their plate right now. So these are the things that we recommend employers look for. And for all those recruiters on the call right now, you're probably just going to be shaking your head. Yep. Look for patterns. So position switching. This is something we see a lot more, where people have 4 or 5 or 6 jobs in a year. It's becoming a lot more commonplace that people are switching jobs fairly quickly. Now, my recommendation would be, if they're switching employers, that's of less concern than if they're switching jobs. So if they simply don't know who they want to be when they grow up, they're experimenting, they're figuring out, do I want to do this type of work or this type of work? That's a different problem. And that's a problem I usually say you need to have a really deep conversation on, or if there are other applicants that are more in line and have the skill set and have the experience with what you're looking for, pursue them. But if they're switching employers, that's a different conversation for me, because switching employers means they haven't found the place they fit yet. They haven't found that organization where they feel they're going to be able to actually achieve a purpose, where they're actually going to be able to make a difference. So position switching is something we look at. Job seekers, be prepared to speak to it. I'd even recommend that you speak to it in a cover letter. Industry switching is right in there with position switching. So again, maybe they're doing a similar type of work, but they're bouncing around different industries. That can also be a red flag. Employment gaps, I said this. Job seekers, talk about employment gaps up front. We understand as employers that life happens, and sometimes there are things that come up. Frankly, for me, it doesn't really matter what the reason is, so long as I know that there was a valid reason for it. So if you do have employment gaps, just make sure to speak to it in a cover letter. And if someone does give you an optional cover letter, which I'm seeing more and more often now, we're not expecting cover letters as much. If it's optional, most people are going to option out of it. So if you want to stand out, make sure you get that cover letter in there. Screening questions. This is probably something that I think a lot of employers can really improve on. Screening questions around skills are easy to fake. If you say, do you have at least 2 years experience doing X? As a job seeker, what am I thinking? Well, the right answer is yes. So I'm going to tell them yes, because I want to get my application looked at. I'll deal with it later. Now, from a job seeker's perspective, don't do that. But I understand the motivation, because often employers have a training program where they can train this stuff. So if I have 18 months and I'm going to be super engaged on your team and super productive, as an employer, I'm thinking, yeah, I'll talk to you. But when we have that 2-year mark, we have to be really careful. What are the answers that we're looking for versus what are the job seekers expecting? So a couple of examples of screening questions that I like. Why did you apply for this particular job? In the days of the job boards with Indeed Apply and some of these other quick apply options, it's really easy to apply for jobs and not even know why I'm applying with this employer. And here's the thing, most job seekers don't know what you're looking for as an answer there. Because I can tell you, I've seen, why did you apply for this job? Because I need the money. Because I want to buy a new car. Because I want to go on vacation. Because all these things that employers don't want to hear, they're brutally honest with the reasons here. One of the things I encourage employers to do is when they say, why do they want to apply? Look for someone who actually spent some time to understand your organization. Are they aligned to your purpose? Are they excited about the type of work you do? Are they excited about the community you serve? What's going to tie them deeply emotionally to the work you're doing? The modern workforce has given up the paycheck and they've traded it for a purpose. They get out of bed in the morning, not because they want to go make money, save for retirement, and then get to go play. The modern workforce wants to play today. They want to get out of bed and they want to feel like they're making a difference while they're making money so that they can go experience life. And as employers, we need to make that mindset shift and understand that that's what the modern workforce wants. So we've got to make sure that we give them opportunities to excel there. Another question I like to ask, one of the things that's really important to me is that job seekers understand who they're going to be working for. Remember, if job seekers aren't leaving jobs, they're leaving employers. I want them to really understand who we are. So sometimes what we will do, and this depends on what information is available online, but one of the questions I like to ask is, how long has the company been in business? You can't fake that. It's an open-ended question. We ask for the number. What that allows us to do is understand, did they actually do any research? Do they know anything about us other than they found us on Indeed? Make sure that the questions you're asking are in alignment with who you're really looking for. If it's not important to you that they understand who they're working for, if you just need a set of hands for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, it's a seasonal job, maybe you don't make them jump through all this. But if you're looking for employees that are going to be engaged, productive, and profitable, it's really important that you make sure you're aligning to their value system as well. We've got a whole bunch of other screening questions in the book. So if you guys want to check out the book Unmasked, like I said, you can download it for free on my website. We've got some other screening questions that we get into there. Attention to detail. I run into a lot of recruiters that say, hey, this person cannot complete a full sentence. This person's got spelling errors all over the place. My argument would be, unless their job requires them to be really good and proficient at Word or really proficient at spelling and grammar, overlook some of that stuff. There are two types of resumes in the world. Those written by people that don't know how to write resumes and those written by professional resume writers. In my opinion, the resume is really irrelevant to the application process. For those community partners and job seekers listening, though, that doesn't mean that you just get to forego the resume, because so many employers still use it as part of their process. But from the employer's perspective, it's really tough to trust the resume anymore. We don't require it on any of our applications. We encourage our employers not to require a resume because a lot of people, they either haven't put enough effort into it or they've paid someone to put in too much effort. And it's hard to trust either one of those. So if the attention to detail, I know we all want that from employees, just because they didn't pay attention to the details on their resume doesn't mean that they won't be a great employee. That said, they do need to pay attention to the details of the process, following instructions, making sure they're completing the application. Those things are a lot harder to overlook. And then finally, communicate. If 9 out of 10 people are leaving because the process takes too long, it's not that you have a process in place. It's not that it takes 30 days to fill it. It takes too long in between communications. Think about the world we live in, 2021. I can get any information I want within seconds by going online. We as a society are used to instant information. So if I hit submit and I don't have an instant reply saying you got it, I feel like you didn't get it. So make sure you're communicating, even over communicating. We teach our leaders that you need to say something 37 times in order for the front line to hear it once. It's busy, it's noisy. There are a lot of things going on. So if you're a leader in an organization and you want your front line to hear it and really process it, you have to say it 37 times. You have to sound like a broken record. There is no opportunity here to over communicate. Like, it's not like job seekers are going to say, hey, I wish you wouldn't tell me where I'm at in the process. That is never going to happen. So make sure if you're communicating, communicate frequently, communicate regularly, consistently. If there's a way you can communicate it, do that. I got a question here. What replaces a resume? I don't know that there's anything that replaces it, because when we get into the interview process, we do want to know who their previous employers were for a whole variety of reasons I'm not going to get into here. But one of them that I do like is to use the resume to ask for references. So for a lot of times they may not have a resume. We get applications all the time without resumes. But what we'll do is ask for a job history, because we want to know who their employers were. I'm not interested in what they were doing, because keep in mind, if they were a technician at a former employee and they're going to be a technician here, I really don't care what they did for that other employer, because they may do the same or something slightly different for me. I just want to know they have that skill set. So we use the resume to determine how we're going to validate references. We all know this. If I'm asked to give you references, I'm going to give you references of the people that I know are going to say awesome stuff about me. They may be friends, they may be family members. So as employers, if we're really going to be doing reference checking, what we really need to do is call former employers and have those conversations. So we do encourage you, if you are doing reference checks, to at least get the job history so that you can say, hey, I'd like to speak to these 3 employers, so that you can do that reference check. But that's what I would say replaces the resume. It's just so hard to trust the information that's in there. So we actually encourage a more in-depth, longer interview process. So the pre-screen interview, a lot of times we'll call this the phone screen. I've seen that a lot, especially with COVID. This is one of the biggest changes that happens. Everything's gone virtual now. So the phone screen has almost lost some of its appeal, because the first interview becomes the phone screen. If I like you, we're just going to finish the interview. But the purpose of the pre-screen interview is to determine, do you want to go further down the pipeline with this person? So I like this to a first date. Yes, there are blind dates where you've never talked to the person. You show up at a restaurant and you meet each other. But most of the time, there's a phone call that happens that says, do I want to sit down and talk to this person for an hour or 2 hours later? It's the same thing here. The purpose of the phone screen is to decide if you want to have a deeper conversation with them. Nothing more. For the recruiters on the call, they probably know this. For the business owners or the hiring managers on the call, it's really easy to fall in love with people. It's really easy in a 10-minute conversation to say, I like you, because those first few conversations are about common interests, common values, common goals. So if someone walks into an interview or they get on a Zoom call with me and they are wearing a baseball cap with my favorite sport team on it, all of a sudden we have something in common. It's a lot easier to talk about that for 10 minutes than it really is to dig into the position that I'm looking to fill. The phone screen is that opportunity where we need to show up and we need to just push away and say, hey, I'm not interested in finding out what commonalities I have. I'm not interested in having a values conversation. I have 5 or 6 questions that I want to ask. I want to get through those 5 or 6 questions within 8 or 10 minutes, and then make a decision objectively whether or not I want to move forward. So for those job seekers on the call, make sure that when you are going through a phone screen and you're getting, and this is that pre-screening process, and you're being asked these questions, just be real and honest up front. Don't fake it. Don't pretend you know what the answers they want to hear, because really it is an objective measurement in, do I want to talk to you further? Now, for those of you that don't have phone screens and have turned that into an online form, job seekers, again, make sure you thoroughly answer the question being asked. If someone says, why do you want to work here? Don't say, because I need the money. I think that's a given. So make sure that you're thoroughly answering it and just be honest. I'll tell you, honesty will get you a lot further than answering in a way that you think they want the answer to be made because they'll see right through it. Like I said, 10 minutes max. This is not a time to really get to know somebody. It's the same for everyone. And when I say same for everyone, I say regardless of the position they're applying for. Because what we're looking to do here is we're looking to find the people that are going to be engaged and are going to be a fit long-term. So those 5 or 6 questions are the same regardless of the position they're applying for, if you're doing a pre-screen interview or a phone screen. This is a concept we talk about in the book, which is push then pull. One of the places that I think employers really hurt themselves right now is that they're desperate to fill open positions. All they got to do is find 1 or 2 positive things about the person and they'll offer them a job. The problem is it's very expensive. It's very damaging to morale, and it can create a lot of long-term problems. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that when we're sitting down and we're talking to somebody, we are not thinking of all the awesome reasons that we need to hire them. As employers and hiring managers, we need to say, you know what, I need to keep them at a distance, and we need to remember that they're selling me on why I should hire them, not me selling them on why they should come work here. And I know this is a tough thing to hear for a lot of employers because there is this desperate need to fill open positions. The company could be stalled, may not be growing, may be going backwards, may not be able to win new contracts. So it's tough to hear this. But I think it's really important to understand that if you want people that are going to be gainfully employed long-term, they're going to be engaged, they're going to be productive. It's really, really important to not fall in love with them at first sight and to make sure you're really getting to know the person and that they want to be there. So this concept of push then pull is you're pushing them away the whole time. You're keeping them at arm's length because you know it's important that you don't fall in love with them. And then at the end of the meeting, if you decide it makes sense to go forward, you pull them back in and you say, okay, I'm really pumped. I'm really excited. You are the person I'm looking for. Here's the next step in the process. One of my pet peeves is recruiters that do not end the interview early when they know that it's not a good fit. Recruiters that don't want to be open and honest in the hiring process when they know they want to move forward. One of the worst things you can do as a recruiter right now is say, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. We will be in touch and let you know our decision. Because as a job seeker, they're probably walking right out the door to the next interview. And there is somebody out there that will offer them a job on the spot. So if you're struggling with people who are no-showing you, who are ghosting you, who are in the process and all of a sudden they disappeared, and you are doing that, thank you so much. We'll let you know. We'll be in touch. Stop it right now, because that's really hurting you. And then, like I said before, communicate. I know that there's a lot of compliance concerns. There's a lot of legal departments that are very involved in this. No one's ever said you can't communicate with job seekers. You just have to be careful in how you communicate. But it's okay to tell them where they're at in the process, what's going on, and how they can move forward. So this is one we get to debate a lot right now, is culture fit. There are a lot of people that have taken this out of context and said, hey, this is an easy way to create any kind of disparate impacts or treatments, and so we have to be really careful. But I will tell you, whether your legal team or your compliance department has said you can't look for culture fit, you just have to focus on skills. I'm tired of seeing job seekers show up for 3 weeks, they get into the job 3-4 weeks later, and all of a sudden they find out nothing I was promised is going to be delivered. They told me they were one way, and it turns out they're another. And I know employers, you don't like that either. And this is where that breakdown happens. So the purpose of the culture fit interview is to find out if it makes sense to have them join your family, to be a part of it. This isn't about whether or not they can do the work. This is about whether or not they can fit and they can belong. Do you have an organization that's full of passive aggressive leaders? Well, if someone's not comfortable with passive aggressiveness, then we need to have that conversation up front. Do you have an organization where sarcasm is prevalent? We need to have that conversation up front. Are you talking to a job seeker who seems very disengaged? And it's like, just get to the point. But you have an organization that's very much about meetings and helping people understand the why and communicating those things. Well, that's going to be a problem if you don't address that in the interview process. This is where we focus on values alignment for you job seekers out there, community partners. If you haven't thought through what's important to you from a values perspective, I encourage you to get really clear on it really quick. Because most employers are going to put their values out there. Some of them might be marketing, I get it, but most employers have thought through this process. What is it that they value? What's important to someone joining their team? So if you're a job seeker and you haven't thought about what's important to you from a values perspective, and you're struggling to find an employer where you feel like you fit or you feel like you belong, go through a process of finding this, of figuring this out. It's really important. And from an employer's perspective, it's really important to have this conversation as part of the hiring process. Leadership styles. Remember, people don't leave jobs. They leave managers. They leave employers. They leave leaders. So if you have a very particular type of leader that you hire with certain types of behaviors or certain communication styles, be very clear on that. There's no rule on the planet that I've ever seen that says you can't talk about your leaders in the job description, which if you were on my last training, I said that too, is one of the biggest things that job seekers want to see in the job description when you post it online is who they're going to be working for. Remember, they know what the job's like. They're already doing it. Who are they going to be working for? Talk about their hiring manager. And if you don't know, talk about it in a little bit more general terms, because I promise you, your organization hires a very particular type of leader or promotes a very particular type of behavior or communication style. So be clear on that up front. Again, push, then pull. You can read more about that in the book. And then finally, communicate. One of the things I encourage all employers to do is to let the job seeker know at the end of the interview whether or not they're moving forward before they leave. Now, if you're doing a panel interview or you've got other people, you can just let them know my recommendation is going to be this. But just be very open and honest about that. You're not promising them the job. You're just letting them know what the next step in the process is and whether or not they're going to see that. Finally, position fit interview. This is what most employers are really good at because they've got a job description. They know exactly what it is that they're looking for from a skill set perspective. So the position fit interview is, are you going to be able to do the work? Now, for those of you that actually have skills assessments, that's where this shows up. You do the skills assessments inside of the position fit interview. There are multiple stages of the position fit interview depending on the type of position you're hiring. It's just really important to be very clear. What are the key metrics, the KPIs that you have for that position, the key performance indicators, so that you know someone's doing a good job? We should be interviewing for those things. And that's what we're looking for here. Again, this is the skills fit section. You're looking for ability to learn, or you should be. There are people out there that I promise you don't know how to do it your way. So you want to interview people in such a way that do they have the ability to learn your way of doing it? That's what we should be looking for here. Again, push, then pull, and finally communicate. And then the pullback offer. This is something that we implemented in our business 8, 9, 10 years ago when we first started. And now we teach this to our clients because it's a very, very important piece of the process. It's all about setting expectations. If you are in an organization and you are turning people within 90 days of them starting, or if you're a job seeker and you find out that within 90 days you are not in the right place, this is the step that was missed. Expectations were not properly set. Most people that leave in the 90 days, studies have shown it's because promises weren't kept, implied or otherwise. So it's very, very important that there is a conversation that is had, typically with the hiring manager, that says, this is what you can expect from us going forward. This is an open dialogue. This is something that there is no set process. You should have questions. You should have concerns that have come up inside of the interview, and you say, hey, you know what, we really need to address that. I'll give you a quick example. We were working with a client, and one of the things that they were really, really good at is they were really good at delegating work. New people would come into the office and they'd be like, here, take it all. And what they found was they were really good at hiring people that said, I would love to. I would love the extra work. I'll take it off your plate, no problem. And then those people were just crushed by the pressure and all of the timelines and all the work that they had to do that they had no experience doing. So we changed it, and it was the employer had to do this as well as the job seeker. We had to have this conversation. How do you handle your employer coming in and giving you more work to do? And most people want to say, I want to be here. So I want to take the work off your plate. I would absolutely take it. I will do the extra effort. Well, that only works for so long until they're just buried by the amount of work, and then it doesn't work out. So let's have that conversation up front. We worked with another leader, and the hiring manager here was very absent. The only time he would show up to coach you was when you did something wrong. So we had to have that conversation. Let's talk about this hiring manager. Here's my leadership style. Here's how I communicate. No news is good news in this organization. But if I have to see you in the morning, or you and I are having a conversation, it's not good. Well, there are a lot of job seekers that aren't used to that kind of direct environment. So let's have that conversation before we hire them. Address any concerns the job seeker has. If you have talked to job seekers before, I've done this too, and like, do you have any questions? And they have none, that's a red flag. I promise you, we did not address everything. Job seekers on the call right now, have questions. If you don't have questions, your expectations are not going to be met, I promise you. Get buy-in for the process and what communication looks like. One of my favorite questions to ask in this part of the interview process is, hey, let's pretend that you take the job and 3 weeks in, your alarm goes off, you roll over, you hit snooze, and you go, oh, why did I take this job? I really wish I would have just told him no. You finally decide to stroll out of bed, you come in, you're like, I'm going to do just enough. Like the job seeker is thinking this, the employee's thinking this. I'm going to do just enough to not get fired until I find something else. Job seekers, you've all felt this way. Some employers have felt this way about people they've hired. What happened first? What happened to make you feel that way? And number two, what are your plans to resolve it? It's one of my favorite questions. And I ask it of everybody. What happened? And what are your plans to resolve it? Because the what happened, that's the question that they want to ask right now. The thing that is not clear to them is the what happened. And finally, communicate. I'm starting to sound like a broken record on this communicate one, but it's the number one thing employers miss is communication. All right, so I just want to I've talked about the stages of the interview process. I've shared that with you. Again, if you have any questions, any comments, please throw them in the chat. What I want to talk about is the style of interview process, and we'll go through this pretty quick. But the best interview process is open and transparent on both sides. So if you got a job seeker who's very closed off and is not opening up to you, it's your job as the interviewer to get them comfortable and get them to open up. Somewhere along the line, we forgot that there are human beings on both sides of this table having a conversation about something that is one of life's most stressful events. And for many people, we see the team at work more than we see our families. But somewhere along the line, we forgot to have a connection there. It's really important that we're open and transparent. The interview process is objective and measurable. Take off the rose-colored glasses. Stop hiring somebody because they can fog a mirror or because you need the extra set of hands, and get really objective on what it is that you're looking for from a new employee. And this will create a trusting environment. It will create honest feedback, and it will help set proper expectations. You're not going to get it right the first time, but it is something that you can definitely strive for. So 3 principles for incredible interviews. I'm speaking to everybody, job seekers and employers. Always set expectations. Time, purpose, and outcomes. Here's the thing, job seekers, leave your phone in your car. If you're expecting a phone call because there's a medical emergency or something, set that expectation up front. But otherwise, leave your phone in your car. You don't need it for the interview. This is where I think that open and honest part breaks down, is people are afraid to be open and honest because they're afraid it might hurt their chances. But I tell you, authenticity every single time will win. Set expectations about the process. job seekers, if you know that you've got to turn in 4 weeks notice because it's the right thing to do, address that up front. Don't wait until they make you the offer and they're like, hey, we want you to start in 2 weeks. You're like, oh, I can't give that short a notice. Like, just be clear about that. And talk about unmet expectations. If you know there are things that you're going to fail at as an employer, address it now. Have a plan. Very defined interview questions, very measurable results, and an objective process. That way you take off those rose-colored glasses. You no longer fall in love with people. Job seekers, same for you. Have a plan. If you know there are certain things that you want to ask an employer, don't be afraid to ask them. I would rather you be open and honest up front, and we fight about it before I hire you and we find out it didn't work out. Let's address those things up front. And focus on behavior versus skills. We do a lot of pre-hire assessments, particularly around personality, integrity. We want to make sure that we understand the person, sometimes better than they understand themselves. Skills can be taught. Behaviors cannot. So make sure that you're really focusing on the behaviors that your organization is looking for. Remove their mask. Remember, they show up armed and ready to go. Job seekers are showing up armed and ready to go to answer your questions the way they think you want them answered. Get them to take off that mask so that you can discover their authenticity and you can have the conversation about proper expectations. Determine a cultural fit and then review the skills if it's necessary. For many, especially larger employers, they have training programs. They want to train you how to do it their way. So if you know that you've got that available as a resource, don't focus so much on skills. So here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to identify 2 opportunities for improving your hiring results. If you want, share them with us in the chat. Otherwise, just write this down, take it back to your team and let them know, here are a couple of changes we're going to make so that we can start having a better interviewing process and we can start finding higher quality applicants. So what's next? I've hit you with a lot. Like I said, you can go get some more examples from my book. We've got some educational content on my website. I'd also like to invite you to reach out to me and let's schedule 30 minutes to sit down and talk about some of your biggest challenges when it comes to interviewing or just even attracting high quality applicants. If you want to put your contact information in the chat, I'll be reaching out to you and we can schedule that time. We'll do a short Zoom call and I'll see if I can't help you break through that biggest challenge you're having right now. So that's my offer to you. So if you want to put that in there, let me know. I also want to take this as an opportunity because I know we have employers on the call going, oh, yes, I've got these tough to fill positions. I've got some positions that I wish I could promote out there. I could get out there and get in front of the right people. We have some amazing community partners on this call right now. So if you're an employer on this call, what I'd like you to do, if you have open positions, I'd like you to put that in the chat and share it with all the attendees. Let them know how they can find out more about the open positions. Let them know where they can go online to apply for the job. Promote that here as well. One of the things that I feel we have struggled with a little bit as an organization is still having that networking component now that we're 100% online. And the board and I are committed to resolving that and making sure that employers and community partners can start connecting more, even though we are meeting virtually. So if you've got open positions that you want to share with us and share with the rest of the attendees on the call, please put them in the chat as well. Thanks again. Verily, it's all yours.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Ryan. That was incredibly interesting. And I'm going to download your book straight after this meeting because there's such a lot of information in there. And I'm going to download it and look forward to reading it. So thank you again. So if you could please show the next slide, that would be great. Super, thank you. So I have some resources here for job seekers and employers that I'm going to share. So firstly, as everyone knows, I do work for Arizona at Work. We are a statewide organization really vested in helping job seekers and employers connect. Arizona at Work, we have their centers, one in Gilbert and one in Glendale. They're both open with all the social distancing. You have to wear a mask, etc. But they are both open Monday to Friday from 9 until 5. So folks, job seekers can come in and work on their resume, etc. if they don't have access to a PC at home. So again, our centers are open. However, we are encouraging people to access our services online. Of course, that's the world we're living in. And we have lots and lots of online resources, including interview help, resume help. And we also have access to grant funding for those who want to retrain or train for a new career. So that's Arizona at Work. I will actually put my email in the chat so anyone can contact me with questions about anything. So next of all, Arizona Job Connection Code is a huge statewide database of jobs. So we help employers to post their jobs in Arizona Job Connection, and employees or future employees can search for jobs. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of jobs. So I would encourage job seekers to please register if you haven't already done so on Arizona Job Connection. And employers on the call, if you are interested in having us post your jobs, please let me know. So I'll move on now to Best Companies AZ. They're an amazing organization. You can post and apply for jobs on their website. Career Connectors, another incredible organization, helps job seekers. They have lots of events, help with resumes, help with LinkedIn, etc. Huge wealth of resources. So Career Connectors, they have a lot of interview help, resume help, etc. online. And last but not least, Pipeline Arizona is a great organization. Job seekers can apply for jobs and employers can post their jobs. So again, just a few resources that I can offer and our partners can offer. So again, please reach out to me, email me if you have any questions. Okay, I just want and I apologize for the quality of this slide, but I just want to mention on February the 2nd, we're having a West Valley Industry Spotlight Forum. What this is we have presenters from many organizations, including ASU. We have some companies represented. So basically, the idea is for companies within the advanced business services sector, in other words, insurance, finance, call centers, can come together and meet with potential job seekers. So again, February the 2nd, if anyone has any questions about that, please send me an email. If job seekers haven't done so, I'd encourage you to sign up for our Job Blast newsletter today. We send them out twice a week, and not only information about jobs, companies who are hiring, but lots of other local resources as well are contained in this newsletter. So again, if you haven't done so, please text AZ at Work to 22828, get started. So a great resource. So everybody, if you haven't done so already, I'm encouraging you to please join NETPA. And obviously you will have access to not only these meetings, but as well a lot of information and resources that we have available. So our yearly fees is still $25 individual, $75 for a company and organization of up to 5 employees. If you have any questions about that, if you'd like to join, you can see the link here. But if you do have any questions, any of the board members will be happy to help you with that. So again, please join NETPA. Right, now, save the date. This is going to be really exciting. We will be welcoming James Montoya. And James has an absolute wealth of information about workforce statistics. You might think it sounds quite bland and boring, but I can assure you it's really, really interesting. He gives a great presentation. He talks about unemployment and projections, and it's just a great presentation. So I would really encourage you to save the date on your calendars. We'll be sending out an invite nearer the time, but it will be on Friday, February the 19th at 10 o'clock. So again, save the date, please, for that event. Thank you, Ryan. So it just remains for me to say thank you so much for coming this morning. Thank you again, Ryan, for your great presentation. So stay safe, please, everybody, in these strange times that we're living in, and have a wonderful weekend. And thank you again. Thank you.